Good morning, everybody. I thought I'd hop on here and do a kind of brief, I guess it will be, lecture about Modular 3. Mainly the first sort of half of Modular 3, dealing with the Respondus timed midterm essay, which is basically going to be your essay 3. Um, if you looked in Blackboard recently, I opened up Modular 3 already. We're really going to start on that particular modular after this Sunday. Remember, this weekend you have to finalize your final draft for Essay 2, rhetorical analysis, and make sure that's in by the 11:59 deadline. You should have received feedback initially from me after taking part 1, which was the timed respondus portion of it a week or so ago. And then you should have received some feedback from your peers this past weekend. So what you really need to do with that is basically take my feedback that I gave you initially and the feedback your peers gave you and sort of, go through and see what you need to do to extend it. Because this now it has to be, between the 4 to 5 pages. You need to include those 3 credible scholarly sources. You need to, use quotations, paraphrasing, right? You're having to do MLA 9 parenthetical citations throughout the body of your essay, as well as have that Works Cited page that lists all the sources that you're using throughout your paper. So I sent out, emails. There's information on Blackboard about some of that. There's stuff in your announcements. So please make sure that you are checking that information. I sent out a rubric, how I'm going to grade the final draft. So there shouldn't be any surprises. I know some of y'all didn't even, for whatever reason, didn't take part 1 or complete part 1. And really the time aspect of part 1 was to get you prepared for what you're going to have to do here in a couple weeks with the midterm, because you will have to do another 1 hour timed essay. And with this one, it's not going to be broken up into parts. It's going to be a one and done thing. So basically, when you take the midterm essay, which is going to be essay 3, once you type that and save it and submit it, going up until that midterm date, and we'll double check the date, that's all. You're not going to have a chance to have a peer review. You're not going to have a chance to revise it. You're not going to have a chance to send me a draft, because you can't have a draft. The only thing that you can have with the timed Respondus essay exam is going to be note cards and an outline of your essay, because once you download, and you should have the Respondus app or program downloaded, because all your quizzes are basically, you need to have that to do the quizzes. It's going to lock you down in that testing browser, and you can't even open up Microsoft Word. You're going to have to type your essay in the text box that it provides. If you did part 1 of essay 2, then you realize what you had to do there. It's basically going to be similar to that. Essay 3 is going to be a cause and effect essay, and we'll look at some information here about that momentarily. Keep in mind, we do have 2 quizzes throughout the month of March, quiz 3 and quiz 4. Quiz 3 happens on the 15th, or by the 15th of March, which is Sunday by 11:59. Quiz 4 is going to be by the 29th, which is also another Sunday by 11:59. I gave you some information about quiz 3, right? Check your email, check your announcements. I gave you some handouts. I gave you some links that you should be able to practice and get your answers right. Once you take the little practice quiz, it will give you the answers and tell you what you got right or wrong. The quiz is going to be, over subject-verb agreement, pronoun usage, pronoun antecedent agreement, dangling and misplaced modifiers. So if you go through those links, look at the handouts. If you do the practice, you should be, I hope, fairly well prepared to take the quiz. And it's basically open. You don't have to wait until the 15th to take it, just like you don't have to wait to complete essay 3, the midterm, and that's going to be due on March 9th. And I'm going to be checking to see what, I think that's a Monday. So the midterm essay needs to be completed by March 9th by 11:59. And I will pull this stuff up here so we can all look at it together. And we will go from there. So if you can tell on my screen, this is basically how your Blackboard's going to look. This is where Modular 3 is. Modular 2 is up here. After you turn in your rhetorical analysis, Modular 2 is going to close down and basically go away. And it's just going to have, it should just be Modular 3 that we're looking at, because that's going to basically take us through the whole month of March. You can find your textbooks readings here. If there's any additional videos, there's some information about the cause and effect essay there. We will talk about that. This is where you would go to complete the cause and effect essay. This is quiz 3. This is quiz 4. Again, if you check your announcements, I've been sending stuff, and usually when I put stuff here, it's also going to your email. So there's some practice here that deals with quiz 2. Trying to think. You just have to go back and kind of check and look. This is some practice answers I gave you for some particular. I think it might have been for one of the quiz 1, maybe. But if you go back, I sent out information. Here's that list that you can practice on that will help you with quiz 3. And as we get into the middle of March, I will give you some information what quiz 4 is going to be about, which is basically probably going to be punctuation, commas, semicolons, dashes, that type stuff. We're getting close to the end of the quizzes. I think after quiz 4, we only have one more, which is going to be mainly MLA documentation, quoting, that type stuff. Because it's the month of April, we're going to be focusing on the research paper and the components to that, the proposal and the annotated bib. So essay 4 will be your final essay, and it's going to take pretty much after the midterm. We're going to start talking about the proposal. We're going to talk about the annotated bib. We're going to talk about the research paper topic. So it's going to basically take up that last 6 or 7 weeks of the semester. So that means once we get quiz 3, quiz 4, the quizzes are going to go away because we're not going to have any more, and we're getting closer to the end of the semester. I will say this. I will be emailing some extra credit chances directly. 2 of them sort of deal with the upcoming research paper, because you're going to need to use the college library. You're going to need to use Galileo, that type stuff. So it's more or less, it deals with library resources and information. There's probably going to be at least one extra credit deal that deals with a little survey. And as it gets closer to April, really the middle of April, if there is a quiz grade that you did low on, or a peer review that you did low on, I will drop one of the other, right? I can't drop both. I can only drop one. If you know that now, granted that we still have quiz 3 and quiz 4 and quiz 5, we may have one more peer review with the research paper. But if you have something that that's a low quiz grade or a low peer review grade, and you want me to go ahead and drop that for you, email me the one you want me to drop. And I can go ahead and do that before midterm, because what's going to happen is the college is going to want midterm grades at some point. And if you got a D or lower, you're probably going to get an email. You're probably going to get, a phone call asking why your grade is a D or lower. Because more than likely your program of study needs you to have a 70 or higher, because that is a C. A to C is what's considered passing, what you're going to get credit for. So just keep updated on your grades. I will say, I would say if you're below 69 now, you may want to start thinking about withdrawing from the class, and you will have to start that process. I can't withdraw you until I get the paperwork that you filled out, because all that stuff is going to be done electronically. So, I mean, if you're definitely, 30, 40, 20, 10, whatever the case may be, if that's your grade, if you're that low in the Fs, then yes, I would probably go ahead and withdraw today. Because there's nothing really that you're going to be able to do that's going to be, even if you did all the extra credit, and, it's not going to pull your grade up to a 70 at that point. So you're just sort of, in a lot of ways, you'll be wasting your time and getting yourself all stressed out, trying to get a grade that's a 10 up to a 70 in the next 9 weeks, and it's not going to be possible. Now, if you got a 65, if you got a 70, you still have the possibility to pull that grade up. But keep in mind, you still have that possibility that it can drop in the next 9 weeks or so as well. So, or 10 weeks, however long we got. So just kind of keep that in mind. You don't want to just, stress yourself out to the point where your grade is so low, you haven't been turning anything in, you haven't been getting any feedback or submitting any rough drafts or asking any questions or doing any virtual or in-person tutoring. Your grade is so low that you're not going to be able to come back from it. You might as well withdraw and then possibly take the class in the summer or next fall. Now, I will say summer semester is starting to shape up, meaning the schedule is starting to come online. If you're planning on taking a summer class, you need to get with your advisor and go ahead and start signing up. I will let you know, though, most summer classes are going to be, if they're in person, they're going to be nearly, 2 hours and 15 minutes in length, because we're having to cram in a 15-week semester in 9 weeks. So it's going to be fast paced. There's going to be a lot of information. So just kind of keep in mind, if you're taking in-person classes, you're going to have to be there a lot longer, and they're going to be a little bit more intense. The online portion of it will still be sort of intense because, again, it's still going to be 9 weeks, whether you take it in person or online. All right, so let's talk a little bit about cause and effect. And I can give you some general hints, and we can talk a little bit about the topics. Cause and effect essay, right? This is that Respondus midterm essay. Every action has a reason behind it and a result ahead of it. A cause and effect essay simply explores both. So what is a cause and effect essay? A cause and effect essay is a piece of writing that explains why things happen and what results from them. It examines the relationship between events, situations, or behaviors, showing how one leads to another. So one way to think of this particular piece of writing is a chain reaction. Something happens that yields to something else because of something else, which also yields to produces a result. So why do we write cause and effect essays? Well, we write them for several reasons. One is to make sense of the world around us. Life is full of events and situations that need explanation. This type of essay trains us to think beyond the surface and ask why and what happens next. Second reason we write cause and effect essay is to develop critical thinking. Writing this essay forces you to analyze connections, think logically, avoid jumping to conclusions. It sharpens the mind, or at least it should. Third, to communicate clearly. In real life, whether in school, work, or everyday conversations, being able to explain why something happened or predict what will happen is a valuable skill. Lastly, to solve problems. Understanding causes helps us fix issues. Understanding effects helps us anticipate consequences before making decisions. So if you think causes equal why something happened, effect equals what happened because of it. So there's really two main structures you probably want to focus on when it comes to typing this essay out in 60 minutes, right? The first structure is just focusing on the cause. I sort of give you like a brief skeleton outline here. You want to start with the intro, of course. You want to hook the reader in, have some background information, which leads up to your thesis statement, which should be one complete sentence at the end of your introduction paragraph. And then you're going to have three body paragraphs that just deal with the cause. Cause one, cause two, cause three. You probably want to have your first body paragraph to be your strongest, your second body paragraph to be the second strongest, and that third body paragraph to be your weakest, followed by the conclusion. And the reason that is because usually the last two paragraphs of a time writing is where things get kind of dicey, especially if you're running out of time. So you want to sort of make that first impression, the big impression, the strongest impression. So that's why would want to start with your strongest paragraph as it relates to the body paragraphs of these first. So we're looking at about a 5-paragraph essay here, which again would probably yield, anywhere from 500 to 750 words. It'll probably be anywhere from 2 to 3 pages. It can be doable if you do come prepared with your essay outline and your note cards. So you focus on causes. You want to use this particular method when you want to explain why something happens. So one potential topic here is, I use this as an example, why do students procrastinate, right? You'd want to give cause one, cause two, cause three. The other structure that you can do is just focus on the effects. Again, I give you sort of a skeleton outline, intro, effect one, effect two, effect three, conclusion. You want to use this particular structure when you want to explain what happens as a result of something. So example here, what happens when the students procrastinate, right? So you can go either way with that. There is another method you can do, and I will show you that here momentarily. Sometimes it works well for folks, and sometimes it doesn't work too well, especially because you only have 60 minutes. If you had this as an out of class type essay, right? If you had a couple weeks to do it, we were going to do a peer review and that type stuff, then I would say maybe this next method would work for you. And it would still be an introduction, right? You still need to have a hook and background. You're going to have a thesis statement, but then you're going to have like cause one, and then effect one, and then cause two, and effect two. And you're going to follow that pattern until really you technically need like 3 causes and 3 effects. But since you're doing a, 1 hour timed essay here, I would say if you do consider this method, I would probably keep 2 causes, 2 effects, and then just go right into your conclusion. Again, I'm only showing you this if you think you can think that fast, type that fast, because you're probably going to need, as we look at this sort of outline I've provided for you as it relates to structuring your time, you're going to need, especially if you come prepared with note cards and a really good outline, you're probably going to take about 40 to 45 minutes to actually type this thing. And then you're going to want to take the rest of that time to proofread, the edit, the spell check, the grammar check, to make sure everything is set up the way it needs to be set up, save it, and then actually upload it before the Dropbox closes on you. So if you think that you can do it well, and you can do this particular, cause then effect within the 60-minute time frame, then I say, well, go for it. If you can't, then I would pick either one, focus on the causes, or 2, focus on the effects, because you're already going to be under pressure once you hit, begin. You're already going to be right there in front of that text box. and you're going to need to start typing, because as it gets closer to that last 5 minutes, that's when that clock is going to start popping up on your screen and warning you, hey, you got 5 minutes, you got 3 minutes, you got 60 seconds. So you don't want to be fumbling around with something you think looks kind of easy or easier and realize, hey, maybe I shouldn't have done the cause and then an effect and cause and effect just because of the time issue. So this is sort of what I plan for most students as it relates to like a chart, a pacing chart. The first two things here, right? Choose a topic, brainstorm cause and effects, plan your outline, jot down bullet points, note cards. You're going to have basically between now and the 9th to do all of that. So today's the 25th. The 9th is not next Sunday, because we got this Sunday coming up being the 1st and then next Sunday being the 8th. The 9th is going to be on a Monday. So you basically have all next week. You have the remainder of this week, and you got the weekend, obviously, of next week to, choose a topic, to make your outline, and to get your note cards. Then once you start, again, you're probably going to need at least 45 minutes just to type the 5-paragraph essay. And then from 45 minutes to 55 minutes, you probably want to review and edit, right? That's going to be where you go through and do the spell check, grammar check, all that stuff. Now, keep in mind, because you're using Respondus, it's going to lock you down. So only thing that you're going to be able to really rely on a lot of this is going to be your own knowledge in your head when it comes to the spelling and the grammar, because you're not going to be able to go to a website, Grammarly. You're not going to be able to go to Microsoft Word. I think there might be a spell check in the actual text box, but I think that's about it. The grammar, you're going to have to, know where to put a comma. You're going to know how to fix a fragment or a dingling modifier. Now, when it comes to grading these, I will send out a rubric as it gets closer. A lot of students, ask, how are you going to grade these? Are you going to grade them like the first two because we had time? You're going to be a little bit harsher, that type deal. I realize it's a pressure cooker and you only have 60 minutes. So ultimately, I'm looking at the big ideas. I'm looking at, do you have 5 paragraphs? Does it make sense? Meaning there's unity there, there's coherence there, there's development there. Do you have an introduction paragraph? Do you have a thesis statement? Do you have, if you're focusing on just the causes, do you have cause 1 paragraph, cause 2 paragraph, cause 3 paragraph, so on and so forth? Grammar and spelling, yes, I will look at it. But the deal is, if you only make a couple, 3 or 4 comma errors, I could probably overlook that. Problem is, if you have, in 2 pages or 5 paragraphs, you have a comma splice in just about every other sentence, or you're misspelling the same word 40 times, I'm going to take points off of it. I can't overlook, that type stuff, because I'm like, you do it throughout the same error throughout the whole paper. 1 or 2 I can overlook, but if you got, 7 or 8 or 15 of the same error going on from paragraph 2 to paragraph 3 to the conclusion, then yes, I'm going to take some points off for that, because that's just, you're not going back and taking your time to proofread or edit or whatever the case may be. Use the spell check option that they have. So make sure that you do give yourself enough time that you can go back and proofread and edit and spell check. If we look at some of the topics, we go back up here, and I think I'll also give you some other additional information, and we can kind of look at this, right? Again, you got 60 minutes, 1 hour. It needs to be 500, 700 words, 5 paragraph, basically going to be about 2 pages. You can use up to 1 page of a essay outline. You can, if you print it out and you're not using a double side, you can use the back blank side as scrap paper, or you can take additional notes. I say you can use up to 2 note cards. Again, I'm not so worried about that. If you want to use more than 2, you can write front and back. Just make sure that, Respondus is going to want to see how your testing environment looks like. And they should know, per my instructions, that you can use this stuff. What you can't use is, obviously, you can't use a partner. You can't have a fully written rough draft that you're just basically copying and pasting or retyping over. You can't have that stuff. This whole deal is to see how well you can work under a 1 hour time limit. How well can you work under pressure? How well can you type? How well can you think? How well can you style and develop a piece of writing in 1 hour? That's the whole purpose with this particular essay. And that's what I sort of go talk about on here. You wouldn't necessarily need to read the in-person because your class is online. So you definitely want to read the online instruction. You want to look at the assignment overview, which we sort of talked about. I gave you sort of a brief 5-paragraph structure of how your particular paper could go. And here are some possible topics. Again, if you don't like these topics, you can always go to Google and type in cause and effect college essay topics and see what kind of the web pages, what topics they list, and kind of pick something there. If you do choose to pick something that's not on this list, I would recommend that you email me about it before you take this particular exam, just so I can know what direction you're going to go and that type of stuff. Now, as it relates to your outline or note cards, if you want to, send me a draft of your outline, I can look at it and kind of tell you, hey, you're going in the right direction, you're not going in the right direction, whatever the case may be. If you want to, send me pictures of your note cards, if I can read them, I will give you some suggestions there. It's just you can't have a full page, 2 pages of an essay already written. You have to do this from scratch. So when we look at our possible topics that I provided, how has remote learning changed student motivation? Think about, we're about 6 years out of COVID. Online learning was starting before COVID. It really had to go that way during the year of COVID. And we're still sort of in that mode. I mean, you think of it right now, you're in a virtual online setting. Your class or classes are basically online. Does that change the motivation? Some folks think online learning or online classes are easier. They're basically, you get the same stuff, if not more, than you would if you went to an in-person class. So sometimes they're not necessarily any easier. They could be kind of a challenge, especially if you don't know how to work Blackboard or email or computers or that type stuff. Second topic, the effects of procrastination on academic performance. Now, some of y'all can really relate to this. We can all relate to it because we all were, by nature, procrastination can be a habit for us. We've all done it. We all continue to do it at some point. You might have procrastinated on the last quiz, or you might be procrastinating on essay 2 at this moment, or you might procrastinate on getting stuff ready for this particular essay. There's a cause and effect to procrastination. So that could be a topic that you might know really well and can, produce a really good 5-paragraph essay. Why do people struggle to maintain exercise habits? This is topic 3. Topic 4, why do crime rates rise in economically struggling areas? And then our last topic here, the effects of financial stress on family relationships. Again, these are just possible topics. If you're not really quick on picking a topic and you want somebody to kind of give you one, you can kind of use one of these. Otherwise, like I said, you can kind of go to Google and see what kind of cause and effect topics are out there. Give you some, tips for success here. Keep your thesis simple and clear, right? It only needs to be one complete sentence. Use transitions to show relationships because, therefore, as a result, consequently. In a minute, I can show you where you can find a good bit of these transitional words that really work well with cause and effect papers. Avoid trying to cover too many causes and effects. Again, if you do, if you go with structure 1, you want to just focus on the 3 causes. If you go with structure 2, you want to focus on 3 effects. If you want to blend the 2, you can do cause 1, effect 1, cause 2, effect 2, and then I would probably just go right into the conclusion after that. Focus on depth, not breadth. Leave a few minutes, obviously, to proofread, write clearly, and stay organized. You do not need to go out and get sources for this like you did for essay 2 or what you're going to need to do for essay 4, the research paper. However, if you do use sources, you're going to need to cite them correctly throughout the paper using proper MLA 9 parenthetical citation. And you're also going to have to create that works cited page. So kind of keep that in mind because you don't want to get flagged for plagiarism if you're using other people's words and sources and that type stuff. So again, if you go to Google, and I'm going to show you where you can find, I usually type cause and effect transitional words and phrases. And I'm going to see if I can find a PDF of it. Because usually that's where you're going to, right there, I found a lot here. You can use this AI overview. I mean, this is where AI can kind of help you because, I mean, you're not necessarily copying and pasting and it's not writing you a particular essay. But just scrolling down, there's a lot of different web pages. And again, like I said, I would go through some of these. By the time you probably get to about page 3 or 4, they're all going to be, it's going to be a different web page, and they're transitional words are transitional words. They're not going to change. You can kind of look here to see, right? It says 8 pages or 3 pages. It depends on how many pages you want. So I'm going to look at this particular one and pull this one up. This talks about transitional words. You've seen these, you've used those, you use some of these for essay 1 and essay 2. This is sort of giving you an activity. You can practice with that because it does give you the answers. Let me see if I can just find a list here. So here, this is a good one because it gives you sort of a list for different categories. So you'd use these types of transitional words if you're trying to do, indicate sequence. If you're going to do something with time order, you'd want to use these particular transitional words or phrases, comparison, contrast. And when you get down to cause and effect, we have this here. Now, this is just some, it's not all of them. Again, other websites may have more. Your e-text may have a little bit about this. Do you need to use all of these or remember all of these? No, but I would recommend that you do use some of them throughout your paragraphs to be able to smoothly and effectively connect your causes with your effects, that type deal. Connect your ideas together. And again, there's a lot of different web pages you can use here that will help you with that. This one has 8 pages. And I'm going to see what this one's going to pull up. And you can print some of this stuff out prior to taking that because once you download, and everybody should have the Respondus. If you're taking quizzes, you got the Respondus. But once you hit begin, it's going to just keep you within that text box. So you're not going to be able to surf the net or go anywhere else. So that's why I say I would probably, type out your outline and print that out. And then I would print out any kind of handouts like this stuff and kind of keep that near me. Because otherwise you're not going to be able to go freely and surf the net until after you submit your paper. Now, the other thing I was going to show you, cause and effect, college essay topics. And here I'm just going to put a list. Let's see what happens. AI is probably going to be helpful a little bit with that. Here's a couple here. This is coming from a different college. Divorce on children, cyberbullying and effect on victim, online gambling, video game addiction, tax breaks for new businesses, K-12 students absence school, Parent drug or alcohol abuse and effect on child education, television watching as a babysitter for busy parents. I mean, this is just one particular website. You can go, you have to be careful because obviously they're going to, um, some of these websites, they may want you to buy a paper. And of course, don't need to buy a paper because you're going to have to type this one up within that 60 minutes. Here, this paper help will probably want you to try to buy one, but they will give you topics and you can kind of go with those topics. Here they give you some good cause and effect topics. They give you some that are easy. They give you some funny. They give you some for high school students. If you're dual enrollment, you might want to use those. If you're more traditional college student, a little bit older, you might want to use some of those. There's stuff for finance and economics, culture, education, environmental issues, history, law, media and social media, medicine. So the topics go on and on. So, I mean, here, the effects of Mexican drug cartels, um, the effects of Israel's war in Gaza, the impact of the collapse of the Soviet Union. You want to be careful about some of these topics because you're only going to have 60 minutes to do 5 paragraphs. So, unless you really just know the topic like the back of your hand, you probably don't want to go out there and have to read a bunch of research just to be able to do, a 5 paragraph essay. That's not to say you can't. If you want to do the effects of the division of North and South Korea, you can go out and do the research, but kind of keep in mind that's going to take a little bit of time, especially if you still want to make your outline and create your note cards. Um, but I wouldn't get too terribly far into the weeds with this. Now, kind of keep in mind if you see something here that sort of piques your interest, you can kind of think of it because, when we start talking about essay for the research paper, you might be able to use that topic more or less for your research paper than a 60-minute time writing. So kind of keep that in mind. And we can talk a little bit more about that as we move along. But for the most part, you can find topics. You can either use the ones that I provided, or you can go to Google and have it suggest some topics for you. Either way, if you do have a topic that's not one of the ones I listed, please let me know before you really get started outlining and making note cards. Because I want to know that you're going to have enough to be able to fit the requirements within that 60-minute time frame. As it relates to essay 2, going back to that, yes, that's this Sunday by 11:59. If you have a draft, meaning you fixed what I told you to fix initially, and then you went back and revised and fixed whatever tutor.com, and again, tutor.com is up here. You go where it says textbook tutoring success, click on that, go to tutoring and success resources, click on that, and then you should be able to click on tutor.com here. It should have something different on your end because you're a student. You may have to click here, the home page, but I'll go back. It should have something different on your end. You can upload your paper and they can look at it as well. So initially, by the time we get to Sunday, you would have had, if you use tutor.com, at least 3 different sets of eyes looking at your paper. So I say that to say this: once you have a fresh draft, meaning you fixed my comments or revised for my comments and suggestions and your peers' comments and suggestions, if you want to send me another draft before Sunday, the last time I can really look at it would be, by 6 o'clock on Thursday, which would be tomorrow. Just so that would give me enough time because I'm still grading some of these in my other classes. And I'm grading other papers in other different classes that are not 1101 or 1102. So if you want me to give you some feedback, I will give you some feedback. Meaning if you do turn something in and it's like midnight on Thursday or whatever, I mean, I probably could still get to it. It may be Friday or Saturday until you get some feedback. I just don't need something that comes in, 3 o'clock on a Saturday because these are supposed to be a little bit longer, right? 4 to 5 pages. And you may not have one, I have to read through it and give the feedback. And two, you have to sort of go through and fix and revise that feedback. And here it is, it'll be Sunday. I just don't know if you would have enough time to do all of that without, causing a lot of stress on you. So that's why I would suggest if you can get it in, a rough draft back to me before 6 o'clock tomorrow, that's probably going to be your better deal. That way I can go ahead and take, a good bit Friday, and I can see about getting some feedback to you at least before Sunday, right? Friday and Saturday, I can probably get some feedback if I get the papers by Thursday. It's going to be first come, first serve. So, as much as I can go through, I will try to get through to them. There's about 20, over 20 students just in the online courses alone, at least one of my online courses. So that's why I say the earlier you can kind of give me the draft, the better. That way you have enough time to go through it as well. All right, so I'm going to end it with that. I will probably be back later in the month of March or so and start talking a little bit about quiz 4, as well as getting into the research aspect of the course, talking about the proposal, the research paper topics, and the annotated bit. I hope everybody has a successful and great rest of your week. And I will be looking forward to reading either your rough drafts or final drafts very soon. Take care.